Good evening. This is Carla from MindPlore with Carla and Friends. And we are here we're not here to speak in English. We're here to speak about gratitude and the value of gratitude on this week of Thanksgiving in the United States. I am very lucky and fortunate to have Jeanne, Locke, Alford with me, and Pastor Billy, and Victor, all of whom you have met in the past few weeks. So I don't even need to introduce them. Having said that, Jeanne, I need you to get started so I can do what I need to do to get this on Facebook quickly.
Great. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with Victor and Pastor Billy, Carla, because who better to talk about gratitude and what it can do for you than somebody who focuses on attitude quite regularly and someone who has a direct connection with the greater being. So I have a couple of quotes to kind of kick us off. One is from the self-help author Melanie Beatty. She says, gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. So I like that because one of the things that we tend to do is we get into a swirl or a spiral, it's often called a spiral, that takes us into various rabbit holes. Yeah, typically we think about what we could have done, should have done, would have done, and we forget to think about what's going on right here and where are we going. So she's saying making sense of our past, bringing peace for today, and creating a vision for tomorrow is really, that one stuck out for me. Emmanuel Dagger, who is a young up and coming kind of positive kind of coach. He founded the Core Work Method, and he's also a best-selling author. He wrote, when gratitude becomes an essential foundation in our lives, miracles start to appear everywhere. And I love that. That's one simple key. If you want to experience miracles, be grateful. Be grateful what you have for what you have today, because miracles start to appear everywhere. And then Dr. Holden, who's a British psychologist and author. I really got into authors this time when I was looking into this. Dr. Holden said, the miracle of gratitude is that it shifts your perception to such an extent that it changes the world you see. And that really pulls the other two together. It shifts your perception. We talked a little bit, Carla, a couple of weeks ago about rose-colored glasses, and I was saying how I really like them. Because even though people, use that as a insult, you're looking through the world with rose-colored glasses, because it means that your perception is looking on the positive end, the positive side. I like it because that's where we should be. We should start out expecting miracles, looking for a vision for what we can do for tomorrow. And so, all three of them together kind of build a picture of where I'd like to see us go as we spotlight gratitude. And here in the United States, it is Thanksgiving. And, we used to go around the table. My mom and dad would make the 7 of us come up with something we were grateful for. And they made it, they kind of made it complicated because they wanted us to talk about our brothers and sisters and what we were grateful for. Which, I think was brilliant because we were a family of kids that made a lot of noise about each other, and to remind us that no matter what, we loved each other was a brilliant thing to do on Thanksgiving. So, Pastor Billy.
Yeah. Well, I am just so grateful. I'm thankful for being here and hearing all that good stuff that you just said, Jane. And I really was hoping to hear from Victor, because Victor, like Jeanne, you always have something good to say. And as I hand it off to Victor, I'm just grateful for Carla and her vision for MindPlore. So I'm living in like the ocean of gratitude today. So the ocean of gratitude, just thankful that I've been on MindPlore a couple dozen times, and thankful for Carla and for you, Jeanne, and for you, Victor. So Victor, we'd like to hear from you about what you think about gratitude.
I think gratitude is a natural state. Particularly, it's my natural state for sure. As far as I'm concerned, when Jeanne alluded to people who accuse her of looking at life through rose-colored glasses, I think many of us don't realize that all of us are looking at life through some colored glasses at some time. A few of us are present to it, and a few of us leverage it, and we choose the glasses that we're going to look through, hence view attitudes. Because see, when you change your view, you can change your attitude. And when you change your attitude, you'll find yourself that gratitude can be a natural state, because you can always find something to be grateful for. Conversely, you can always find something to not be grateful for. The choice is yours. And I spend the overwhelming majority of my time right up in here, managing this view, picking out the things that's going to benefit my point of view, the thing that's going to make me feel good about being alive, the things that's going to help me produce other thoughts. Because see, when you take a thought of gratitude or any other thought, in no time at all, you got other relatives of that thought rushing into the scene. So if you choose 1 minute, 1 moment, one thing that you're going to exhibit gratitude for, it won't be long before you find another reason to be gracious. And I
Yes.
live that way. You know, in the early part of my life, you know, the place I'm in, my family of origin, being grateful got to be sort of like a phantom thing, because we weren't reminded of how good we had it. We was reminded of how bad it was. And when you get in the habit of knowing how bad it was, you have to actually develop the habit of having gratitude, which is what happened to me. It was so difficult just to feel good. But now I'm grateful for the ability to just feel good. I'm grateful for the knowledge that it's my decision what I'm going to think of for the next minute. And what I'm going to think of for the next minute is going to impact how I feel. And if I don't have anything to think about, I can always think about gratitude, Pastor. I can always think about, I mean, even if I want to get really deep with it, I could be grateful that Christ died for us, right? Be glad about that, so that I don't have to be miserable. I don't have to allow the obstacle of life to tear me down. And really, you know, you can be grateful for that or not. But if you're not grateful for it, it's up to you. I'm going to be grateful for it. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I will demonstrate the task I'm most ungrateful to be able to do, but I am able to do it. So I'm going to show you I can do it now. And I'm going to shut up for a minute.
Hey, well, while you're shutting up, let me just jump in. And in preparation for the show today, MindPlore, I looked up what's the genesis of the word gratitude. Well, it comes from the Latin word gratis. And what's gratis? Well, gratis is the giving of a reward, right? So we get gratitude and grateful from gratis. So when you say thank you to someone, what does that mean? And I began to meditate upon this and think about this, and it really brought springs of living water to my soul. And when I say thank you to someone, whether it's my bride of almost 43 years, and I always say I've been in assisted living for 43 years, you know, when I say thank you to her, I figured you'd like that. When I say thank you to my bride, I don't call her my wife, I call her my bride. Well, you know, often husbands will tell me, well, why do you thank your wife? I said, well, why wouldn't I thank my wife? So when you give thanks to someone, when you're grateful for a person, not because they've done something for you, but just say, hey, thank you. I love you. I'm grateful for you. Then it's giving them a reward. And there's not a human being alive that does not like a reward. Everyone likes to be rewarded. So when you live a life of gratitude, you're really handing out rewards all day long, right? We all remember when we were kids, maybe playing sports, everybody got a trophy and we were depressed if we didn't get a trophy. So living a life of gratitude is giving out rewards. And, if you go to Google Scholar, and that has all the academic literature from, thousands of peer-reviewed journals, and you type in the word gratitude, what you'll discover in the dozens of academic research on gratitude is that people who are grateful live happier lives, they live more fulfilled lives, and guess what? They live longer lives. So, and I'll conclude with, I'm a pastor. I pastor a church, and I say, there's some, and I know Victor will like this, but there's some folk in the church that they haven't been baptized in water. They've been baptized in lemon juice. And those aren't the saints. Those are the ain'ts. And, many are cold and a few are frozen instead of called and chosen. And they're sitting on the premises instead of standing on the promises. But, there's in the church, and I always go up to them. This is, you might think this is a little unkind, but we're talking about gratitude. So I say, my brother, you're always so negative. Have you been baptized? And oh yeah, I've been baptized. I said, well, did they use water? And they'll look at me like I'm a little nuts. And he'll say, well, of course. And I said, yeah. I said, I think there was a lot of lemon juice in that water when you were baptized. So let's live a life of gratitude. Let's always thank people. Let's grab an attitude of gratitude. I thought about that when I was listening to Jeanne and Victor. Let's grab an attitude of gratitude. I knew Victor would like that. And you're right, Jeanne, expect miracles. When you're grateful for people, you do see that paradigm shift. And when you're thanking people around you, whether it's your spouse or your kids or your grandkids, and, thank you. And I was with two of my little granddaughters, they did a volunteer project. They were just stuffing envelopes, right? I said, hey, people, here's 2 envelopes. And I want you to take the little envelope and I want you to put it in the big envelope. They did like 1,000 envelopes last night. And I came by and I gave them each a little money and I thanked them. And, they're these little kids, they're 5 and 3. Their face just glowed. Their faith just glowed. So that's my bloviating and sermonating and pontificating on living a life of gratitude. Let's grab an attitude of gratitude.
You can't show any more instances of gratitude until you give somebody some money. Let me tell you, you want to tell somebody how grateful you are for them, just give them some money. And all the money that you have and all the good that it brings you, it won't bring you nearly as much good keeping it as it'll give you by giving it to somebody. And the person that you give it to, you better know that they're going to be grateful for having received the money from you.
Yes.
And what's likely is they're going to be grateful for receiving from you, and they're going to more than likely give to somebody else who they're grateful for. And you can start this chain of gratitude, this chain of being grateful. And that's why in the Bible it says, when you give, it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shake it together, and running over and give into your bosom. Now, we're not preaching today. We're not talking about, we're not trying to evangelize the world. Well, not directly anyway. But we're not preaching today. We're just demonstrating how you can get really good things out of life by being grateful. And gratitude also is a thought process. And our thinking forms something called neural pathways. And those neural pathways act like rails on like a railroad track. And those neural pathways, they bring good to you. When you have gratitude, gratitude forms those pathways, and they bring more reasons for you to feel grateful. Now, mind you, if you choose not to use gratitude, it's going to bring whatever it is that you are choosing to think about. Okay, so I'll try to be quiet again.
I have to point out, because Carla has a show about learning English by speaking English, which is a great show. But what we do when we hear $50 words, I stop and go, that's a $50 word. So we did hear one, and I want to point it out. It's bloviating. It's not a word that we use every day, but it has a particular meaning. And the meaning of bloviate is to speak or write verbosely or windily. And I'm really happy that Merriam-Webster used the word windily with that.
Windily. Wow.
The Free Dictionary said to discourse at length in a pompous or boastful manner. So we often make fun of somebody who's expanding and going on and building something as bloviating. But in truth, what you were saying, Pastor Billy and Victor, the thoughts you have in your head reproduce out here. So if you're continually making stuff up, you're living in a fantasy world, and it's hard to be thankful for that. But when we start to look at other things with a focus of gratitude, a filter of gratitude, we see them differently. And I was thinking about this, and I was a young adult. I was newly married. I was a little bit angry with the mister, who's now the ex-mister. But I had this moment of clarity in the midst of this argument. And I don't even remember what the argument was, but they always say in the first year, you really have a lot of struggles because you're trying to figure out how to be a unit together. And I remember being very, very angry and looking at him and seeing something completely different than the man that I had married. My mind saw every wrinkle, every problem he had with his face. It was like this filter got pulled off. And in the moment where I was like, wait a minute, the man I married is handsome, and I'm not seeing that. So it was a clear moment where I took a deep breath and I went, okay, I'm losing it. Right now, I am so angry that I'm seeing something that's not real. And when I calmed myself down and I looked, I saw the man that I married. So I realized in that moment of clarity that I had a choice to keep going down the path of being really angry and having that filter my visual perception, or taking a step back and go, wait a minute. And that's what we ended up doing. So we took care of that problem. But I walked away with this experience that where your emotions are, that colors what you see. So as I got into more of a spiritual practice, I realized that things like meditating really do have power in how you interpret the world, what you see, and that colors how you think. So the ministers that I was working with really underscored how we had that choice. And I now talk about choice. We have that choice to look at something emotionally, chaotically, in the midst of a temper tantrum, or we have the choice to look at something, take a deep breath, and be a little bit more peaceful and interpret what's going on from a much more, I like to think, graceful position. And that's the power, I think, of gratitude, where as the psychologist, Dr. Holden said, the miracle is that it shifts your perception. That's why I pulled that out, because if we think about shifting the world, out of the chaos we've been in, we gotta shift our own perception. And we've talked a lot on this show, and I've talked a lot in other areas, how just making a tiny shift in my world changes the people around me. And then they make a tiny shift and it changes the people around them. And, it's a shift, it's a shift, it's a shift. And then we can start to see the more grandiose kinds of shifts, but it takes time to do that. The thing is we're but a pebble in a very big lake. And if we can throw that pebble in and make those shifts, we have a much easier chance of igniting the miracles. And I'd love to see us all ignite the miracles by simply learning to smile and be grateful. Now, I know, Pastor Billy, you talked about some of your congregants, being more lemony, more acidic, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, bitter.
I'm trying to have a different word here. Anyway, but that the whole thing about when life gives you lemon, you make lemonade. There is a purpose for people like that in our world. And that's one of the things I learned as a communications coach. If you have a group of people, there's gonna be at least one that's gonna be acerbic. And they've got a role. It's not something I would say to their face. You have a role, Victor, and your job is to keep me, honest and keep me on the straight and narrow, because that encourages them to continue to be somewhat lemony. But there is a role for folks like that to keep us moving forward. So there's always going to be a clown. Victor, nobody's ever accused you of that, right? No, the clown is the person that can lighten the mood, that can walks into a room and says, "Oh my God, there's a lot of tension. I'm going to come up with a joke," and lightens the mood. There's always the critic. One of my biggest fears is that the critic's going to put me in the spotlight, but there's the worst thing that I can tell you is there's an inner critic that we need to sometimes silence, but we need to hear them. We need to understand what that critic voice is inside, just as you need to hear the critic. And I remember this woman from my church. She played the organ, and she always had these hats. She was beautiful hats every Sunday, but she had a way of talking to me that I interpreted as criticism. She didn't necessarily like that I played the guitar in church. She was more of a traditional person, and I was part of the folk choir. So we didn't have a really strong relationship because I saw her as a critic. But what I learned later in life when I think of her is she was spurring me on, and it was her language of love to make us try to be a little bit more, it's not the right word, but professional in how we were singing in church, the folk choir. We were a bunch of teenagers, so what did we know? We just got up and I hit a chord and we'd start singing, if I had a hammer or whatever. But she got us to actually act like a choir. So even though I took it as personal judgment, she made my group better. So there's always that role for somebody. And when we start to look at the roles from a focus of gratitude, we can see what people are trying to do. I mean, I learned late in life that my father's language of love was that way of pushing, so you got straight A's, you could do better, and you'd look at him like, what? I got straight A's. What do you mean? But that's how he learned growing up. Somebody was pushing him to always do better. So that's what he did, even though I didn't interpret it at that time. But my father's role in my life was to push me beyond my comfort zone. So I'm thankful that he did that, even though it was a rocky road. You know, I'm thankful for those rocky roads, because as I became a professional and managed crisis communications and corporate communications, nothing could faze me. That's how people saw me. They go, nothing phases you. Well, I had learned to take a deep breath and to look at a situation and say, what is it we need to do, and handle it. You know, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I stayed in my comfort zone.
Yeah.
So that's why we have these trials and tribulations, and we should be thankful for them, because they push us to grow. Carla, I saw your hand go.
Yeah, I've been trying for a little while, actually.
We don't need you to sit in. You just sit over there.
Oh, see, those would be fighting words.
Isn't the right word to use today. I'm hoping that everyone here has shared it out, because it doesn't look like people know that we're here. But we're going to do this anyway, and we're going to do it on Thursday, and the show will be on YouTube, just so you know. Having said that, I want to get back to gratitude, because I'm actually very grateful that we can share this show out today on both YouTube and LinkedIn. Otherwise, we would have had to cancel the show. I'm grateful today that we are all together, that we can come together and bring the different parts of the United States together. I am in Washington, D.C. Jeanne is in California, I believe Sacramento, and so is Victor, but they've never met. And Pastor Billy, I just found out, lives in both Huntington Valley, where I used to live when I lived in Philadelphia, and New York. And we have never met. I am extremely grateful that we can come together using the internet and make these connections. This is the beginning of gratitude. I think we all forget that we look at what is not going well and think, oh, I can get it better by just thinking about it's not going well, it's going to improve. Or think about how we want the world to look in our minds and create that around us. And as we begin to create the world around us and use our words to do that, the world becomes more positive. And the whole point of this, which I don't think I was very clear with anyone when I picked this topic, it's something that Jeanne just said recently about putting the right words in our mind. Very often we put words like, oh, I've never done this, I'm not going to be able to do it, instead of, hey, I'm doing something new, I'm learning something new. We are just like the baby learning to walk. We haven't walked before, but now we are walking.
Yes.
Everything we do is the beginning of a new phase in our lives. And if we can just tell ourselves, hey, get away from telling ourselves, I can't do that, or I can't make sense of it, and just get that excitement of being a child and learning something new, we're going to find that our lives change to seeing all those miracles happen. Because the miracles are happening, but we're not aware of them half of the time.
Yes.
Let's become aware of them. And Pastor Billy, you've been saying yes. Would you like to say something more than yes?
It's yes, in agreement. And just the thought came to my mind that, and Victor referred to this earlier about these neural pathways. most people don't know that adopting an attitude of gratitude and gratefulness and thankfulness, it's a discipline. It's like, okay, you want to get physically fit, you go to the gym. You want to be healthy, eat the right foods. You want to be grateful, it's an exercise that we have to practice each and every moment of each and every day. It's every conversation, every phone call, every email, every whatever. Yet anytime we communicate with another human being, we have to show forth an attitude of gratitude, but it's a discipline because, hey, all of us have been on the phone with the insurance companies that I can't believe you're telling me that my payment is late when I sent it in 3 weeks ago. Yeah. Speaking from personal experience, but we need to thank that person because, think about this. We don't know what the other individual is going through. Maybe their mother died. Maybe their father died. Maybe they don't have money to pay the mortgage or the rent. Maybe they just were in a car wreck. And when we reward people with gratitude and thankfulness, then it blesses them. And we actually become an agent, if I could use that, an agent, a representative, an ambassador of God's love, because God is all about thankfulness. So, Carla, I was just agreeing with you about, living that life of gratitude and expecting these miracles when we're communicating gratitude to other people. So thank you.
And we forget that, Victor.
And if people understood the truth of what the both of you just articulated, they'd be fine and they'd implement it. But the difficulty is people don't understand the truth of what you're saying. People don't understand that an attitude of gratitude is essential. And some people tend to overemphasize the presence of evidence. Now,
right. But Victor, let's not talk about that. Can we flip it over? How can we help them understand?
That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing. See, so some people, as they hear what you and Pastor Billy are saying, they have ways to negate the truth of what you're saying, that you can't tell me that my attitude is going to improve my life all that much, right? And they may look for evidence of what you are saying for that to be true. But sometimes you can't find the evidence is where I want to go to. Sometimes you just have to believe. And when you understand belief and the power of belief, right? Like there's this quote that I heard some time ago and I stand on it. It says, "To them that believe, proof is unnecessary. And to them that don't believe, proof is impossible." So the strength of what you and Pastor Billy are saying is undeniable once a person believes it. So they can stop trying to look for evidence that what you're saying is true. Stop trying to look for proof that, my attitude is going to affect my life, and just simply believe it. And you don't need any evidence of what you believe. And when you think of things that we all believe now with absolutely no evidence whatsoever, we believe it. Let's believe this. Let's believe that an attitude of gratitude impacts your life and roll with that and act as though it's true and develop the attitude to get you there. So
Victor, there has to be steps to get there because people are not used to that. They're used to thinking what they see in the world is what's really happening around them. So what is one thing you do to shift what you see from the world to what you want inside? And I know that I'm asking you, Victor, but Jeanne,
you got to believe, Carla. Step one is believe it's possible. That's step one.
Step one is the most difficult step. If you have been taught all your life that this is not possible, think for a moment. We wouldn't have cell phones. We wouldn't have cars. We wouldn't have computers. We wouldn't have many, many things we have now. And they had it because one person was able to believe it. But others said they're crazy. They can't do it.
A
So,
person that doesn't yet believe can consider what you just said. Consider that everything you just mentioned was once impossible. Once it was just an idea in somebody's
That's
mind
right.
that has
That's
come to
right.
fruition. So meditate on the things that you know exist right now and believe the things as complicated as a computer is, as complicated as a car is. At one time, it was impossible and it came out of somebody's mind. Somebody chose to believe. So if you were to choose to believe that it's possible, that you could impact your life by changing your attitude, if you could just believe that, think of how phenomenal a change could occur in your life, and compare that change with the invention of the computer, with the invention of the car, because truly find as many things as you can think of wherever you are, whatever you can touch, whatever you can feel. At one time, somebody just believed you could do it, and here it is.
I heard a fact yesterday that kind of blew me away. The iPhone, which revolutionized the cell phone industry, and the cell phone, which revolutionized the phone industry, but the iPhone is about only 15 years old, and it's changed the way we live. Everybody's got some sort of a smartphone now, because prior to the iPhone, our phones were basically, things we could stick in our pocket. They were cell phones, but they didn't have the intelligence. But Steve Jobs had a way of thinking beyond, whatever the form factor was. But I think what I'd like to point out is the first step is awareness, being aware of the voice in your head, being aware of how you react to things. There is a voice in our heads. Each of us has it, and sometimes it's that critical voice, but it's a voice there that's been there for a millennia. It's been in our cultures, no matter what culture you're from, for a millennia, or several millennia actually, because it's the voice that keeps us from letting the saber-toothed tiger eat us. It's that we call it the monkey mind oftentimes, but it's a voice that keeps us safe. And that voice keeps us safe by not allowing us to jump too far ahead of ourselves. And it interprets differently in everybody. It's not about, oh, you can't go outside, even though sometimes it seems like it is. But once we're aware of that voice and we can say, I got it, I'm taking a step forward, I'm getting out of my comfort zone, then we can change how we think. And when we change how we think, we become more aware of how we can think more gratefully. How we change. Somebody didn't, I sent a text to somebody and they didn't respond like within 5 seconds. And believe me, I have a friend I've known for 20 something years, and she blasted me because she sent me a text and I didn't answer it for a whole day. Well, she didn't know that the first part of the day I was in the car, and I refuse to read texts when I'm in the car. That's just rule number one. I do not get them. I do not answer them. I do not pay attention to them, because it's me, the GPS, and the road. You really don't want to take me off of that level of concentration, because I may be going to San Francisco, but I'll end up in Reno. You have a way of taking the wrong directions or whatever. And I come by that naturally. My mother did that naturally, so it's perfectly fine. But my point here is, she had no idea what was going on, and she started yelling, and I was like, I was in the emergency room last night. And she's like, stopped in her tracks of yelling at me and said, what, are you okay? Well, I am okay. I just needed to have something checked out, and my doctor said, go to the emergency room. It needs to be checked out right now. But my point was that she had no idea. So she jumped to a conclusion, and the conclusion was that I didn't think she was important enough to respond to her text. She had no idea that I was driving for 7 hours, and then the doctor told me, because of something that I had emailed him, that I needed to go in and get something checked out. Well, we all have these things called lives, and what's going on in Victor's life, I have no idea. But if I need validation from someone and I send Victor a note and I hope he would answer me, but he doesn't, I might get hurt. And it has nothing to do with Victor. It has everything to do with how I'm reacting to something. So once you're aware that you can take a deep breath and validate yourself and, be more in charge of how you act or react, then you can be open to being more grateful. And the most powerful thing I learned in my spiritual practice, when I was learning to pray, and I grew up in a very traditional spiritual world where you ask God for everything, and then you wonder, God, I wanted that really good looking guy to come and take me out. Where is he? God, I needed to win the lottery. I really need it. And I love, there's this joke that I just love when people go off and tell me about all the things they've asked God for. And this woman, she said, God, I need to get shoes for my baby. I really need to win the lottery. And she doesn't win. So the next week, God, I got to pay the rent. They're going to kick me out. I need to win the lottery. And she doesn't win it. And she's like, the third week, she's like, God, really, they're kicking me out. My kid has no shoes. I have no food to put on the table. And the skies part and a sunbeam comes down and this voice comes out and says, lady, buy a ticket. The point being is we can want a lot, but until we act on it, nothing's going to happen. We have to take the first step. We have to be aware. We have to listen to ourselves.
Okay.
You have a hard time to be grateful. You have to talk to that voice inside.
I guess we have to let Carla speak. It's her show.
Carla.
Yeah, please. It's great to say we need to listen to what's inside. Do you have a technique to help them get there? Do you have a meditation technique? We're spouting words and I'm doing it too. But let's bring the words down to some very technical, you can do this and it will help you move. I can do this, but it may take weeks, and be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. I'm sorry to interrupt you about that.
Oh, no, that's great because, if step one is being aware, step two is taking a pad and taking a pen and spend 10 minutes writing what's in your mind so that you can become even more aware of it. Journaling is, I call it the J word and I resist it, but it's something important. I also take it another step further. I'm right-handed, but I tell people, put it in your left hand or whatever's your non-dominant hand and write from there, because the words that come out are going to be so foreign to you because they're coming from another side of your brain. You're using a different part to be able to write with your non-dominant hand. So you might actually become aware of something that you don't let pop up in the middle. So just 10 minutes a day of meditating and journaling makes a huge difference because you're supporting yourself. And those are simple steps. I believe meditating for 2 minutes makes a difference. Or I was originally taught that I had to sit for 20 to 30 minutes. And, anybody who knows me knows if you can get me to sit for 20 to 30 minutes, Mark Harmon and NCIS needs to be on the TV. I tend to get up and move around. So 2 minutes, that's the person who got me into meditation said, just 2 minutes, take a deep breath, sit quietly for 2 minutes. And 2 minutes eventually became 10 minutes and 15 minutes, but it takes practice. But I think between taking the deep breath and minute meditations and journaling, those are two very strong tactics, I'm going to say, things that you can do to start making changes in your life.
And when you're saying meditation, it doesn't mean you clear your mind. You work hard and you clear your mind. You have 1 second of nothing and then streams of thought. Thoughts are a part of meditation.
Yes.
And if you're aware that thoughts are a part of meditation, look at your thoughts. Are you thinking that you're the most wonderful person in the world or the most horrible person in the world? It's not true if you think you're the most horrible person. You need to I, Jeannie, Pastor Billy, and Victor all need to do the same thing. Remind ourselves that we have a lot to offer. And by offering what we have, that's when the miracle begins to happen. When you hide yourself, that's when the negativity happens, because you're hiding who you are. And that's when you're being untruthful to yourself.
Is everyone here familiar with the story entitled The Acres of Diamonds?
Yeah, Russell Conwell.
Well, okay. Well, the offshoot of The Acres of Diamond is that everything that we need is in here somewhere, and that's the last place that many people will look. So what he suggests as a result of the story, and the story is a little involved, and I love telling the story, but the point that I want to get to is what he suggests is that everyone get themselves a yellow legal pad and a pencil. And on a regular basis, just sit. And he suggests an hour, but 10 minutes is a good place to start. Just sit and write down ideas. Just write down thoughts. Write down solutions to things that you have noticed in the course of your life that could use solutions. And most of the things that you write down, most of the ideas will just be crappy. But you only really need one idea to change your life. So if you commit to just doing that on a regular basis, you're going to be amazed as to what happens as a result of just sitting down and thinking of things and writing it down. So that's one thing that anyone can do. That's one thing that I've done. And over the course of time, that's how I came to cement this whole idea of view attitudes being a situation where you change your view and you can change your attitude. I found that when I looked at things a certain way, I felt a certain way about things. And so now I look at everything as an opportunity to improve. I look at everything as something that can be leveraged for my good if I will only take the time to think about how the thing is going to affect me. And it comes from a verse in the Bible I talk about from time to time that says, all things work together for good, right? And if all things work together for good, it doesn't really matter what it looks like right now. It doesn't really matter what you think about it. I know that there's some good in it somewhere. And that's an idea that I got from sitting down with a yellow legal pad and just writing down ideas. So if everyone can commit to doing that, I think they'll implement another one of my favorite sayings. They'll be better than they were, but not as good as what they're going to be, because as long as they keep that habit up, they'll keep getting better.
And Carla, if I could add to that, you asked about offering something practical to our viewers, to our listeners.
Yeah.
And this is what I began doing many, many years ago. And it is as simple as taking index cards, 3x5 cards, right? I've got one here right in my card. What you do is you take an index card and you write something positive on it, like stay positive today or live a life of gratefulness. And you put this on the refrigerator. You put it on the bathroom mirror. You put it on the inside of your front door of your home, your apartment, your condo. And you just take a felt tip marker, a Sharpie, and you write a positive statement, and then you tape it to the mirror, the refrigerator, the door. And if you've got to do that in every room of your house, put them inside your car, right on your dashboard, put it in your wallet, carry it with you. And when you go to pull out maybe your vest pocket calendar, it's going to be right there. Be positive. Wow. Here's my calendar for 2021. Inside, I have a 3x5 card. Be positive. Live a life of gratefulness. So it's we call that constant reinforcement, right? We all know about that in psychological terms. And so that is really that would be, I know we've talked about awareness and so forth, but on a practical level, I need practical stuff to remind me to be positive and to live a life of gratefulness and gratitude. So take those 3x5 cards, write a positive statement on it, put them all over your house, your car, wherever you live, and go for it.
And I have a question. To some people, that word positive can have many different meanings. Should they also define positive to them for themselves? People, what does positive mean? Does that mean I can't say I can't speak? Does it mean I can't say I can't walk? Does it mean I take not out of my vocabulary? Does it mean that, and we can go on and on about that. So we need, at least in my mind, I think we need to understand what positive means. And maybe I'm being really nitpicking, but I think we need to really go deep to understand how to be positive. And Jeanne, you're chomping at the butt.
All of us are.
I
The
want
opposite
you
of
all
negative.
doing that.
If you can take a minute and become aware of how you see a word like positive, we all put definitions on things that are different. Kimmy Avery, who's been on the show a couple of times, she'll often say men and women, it would be best if we had two different languages because we use the same words, but we mean completely different things. And that's very true. You need to, it's not a men and women thing. My friend that I told you about who didn't get immediate response because of a text from me, she had a whole bunch of meaning behind what she put in her text. I wasn't aware of it because I had this thing called life going on. So we all have to adjust our definitions, but you start with, what do you believe is positive? Is it change? Is it being happy? Is it always having a smile? Because that's actually not necessarily achievable, because we all have ups and downs and we have to learn to gracefully go through them so that we can be a little bit more smooth in our life. So that we all have definitions of what we think positive is. So step one goes back to what I said earlier, is become aware of what your definition is. Step two is to take action. And to take action means, if I believe that this is positive and he believes that that is positive, what is it between the two that we can adjust so that we're using the word the same way? And how do we communicate that? And this is a whole nother show, obviously, but I'm going to say it. When we communicate, we're not actually, we think we're communicating and we're not, because we think, I'm going to give you all this information, but I'm not going to listen to what you have to say because this is a one-way thing. That's called a talk, a sermon, a diatribe, lots of different words for what that is. But when you communicate, it's an exchange of information between me and Victor, between me and Carla, between me and Pastor Billy. It's an exchange of information, which means I get to say what I think, but I have to listen to what you think. And then we're communicating. And if we're not doing that, then I can't surmise that you might be using a word differently. So we have to understand that everybody has a different meaning because we grew up in different worlds. My world of growing up as a military brat and going to different schools every year has nothing to do with what Victor's world was. My world of hitting fourth grade and, I used to say I was the scapegoat. I was the one that got picked on in fourth grade. So I react completely differently than anybody else when I saw kids bullying my little brother, or bullying my son. I reacted as somebody who's been bullied, where somebody who's never been bullied was like, oh no, give them space. They've got to take this. I'm like, no, we're going to stop this. So my idea is completely different than somebody else's. We have to become aware of that, Carla. And then we can stand strongly and say, this is what I mean. Positive means forward action. That's what I mean for positive. Where you might have positive means happy. They both can mean the same. They both can mean something different, but we can be moving in the same way towards, something that's more, to me, positive mathematically is moving forward by adding things. Does that make sense?
It makes plenty of sense.
Everything emanates from a thought of some kind. Everything, whatever you're talking about. And so you want to know about positive. The one thing, Carla, that that no one can ever know, no one else can ever know, is how you feel. The one thing that I know that no one else knows is how I feel. Now, since I'm saying that everything emanates from some sort of a thought, and you want to talk about what's positive, what's negative, how do you know? If everything evolves from a thought, and a thought determines how you feel, you'll know if it's positive, Carla, by how the thought of it makes you feel. If the thought of it makes you feel poorly, then you know it's not positive. If the thought of it makes you feel good, and once again, this is not something that someone can tell you. No one can tell you. I can't tell you how you feel, Carla. This is something that you know. This is something that only you know. And my opinion about what's positive ought not impact your opinion of what's positive, because your opinion of what's positive is going to emanate from how you feel, and I could never know that. So if everyone simply used that parameter and simply used that scale, I think we'll get a lot closer to everybody being on the same page about what's positive and what's not. Because things that make me feel good, like Haagen-Dazs ice cream, it's probably going to make you feel good too.
Right. Haagen-Dazs ice cream sounds very good. I happen to like Fratera now more than that, but I'll take the Haagen-Dazs. The point is, at the same time, when we are using words, we all use words differently. And I wanted to really get that point across today. So in being positive, it means what makes you feel good. Now, Victor, you must admit, some people have been shut off from their emotions for so long that feeling good, they have no idea what that means.
We can talk about that on the next show. We can talk about that. We can talk about that on the next show.
About that. Not on Thursday, but we will talk about it.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point, Carla. What Victor said is true. And I think it was Maya Angelou who said, people don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel.
Right.
And that how you react to the world has a lot to do with how you feel. And that is it. I loved how you just said that, Victor. Nobody knows how you feel, only you do. And that has become a mantra in my world. When somebody's talking to me and they go, well, I said this and they told me I shouldn't feel that way. I was like, stop. When I hear the word shouldn't feel, when I hear that phrase, I say stop, because nobody has the ability to tell you how to feel. And when you start to think about the words in your head, the thoughts that you go, they're dictated by how you feel. If you're feeling not grateful, it's good to be aware of that. And then to say, let me just pick one thing. And that's one of my strategies in living. The phrase that I say is pick one. We actually look for too many things. And I learned this in real world. I was, raising my son as a single mother, and, working a job that expected me to be there 60 hours a week. and I had to get to the daycare, no matter where it was before 6 o'clock, or I was going to pay through the teeth, with all the fines and fees. And, my son, as he grew up, he wanted to do soccer. He wanted to do baseball. He wanted to do Boy Scouts. He wanted to do, and I wanted him to do it all. But I finally said to him, pick one. And that's been a guide ever since. So it's been 25 years at least. Pick one. We're going to focus on one thing and we're going to get good at it, you and me. So when he chose baseball, I made sure I was there getting him to the baseball practice, no matter what. I did have a supervisor who wasn't happy that I would leave, twice a week early, but, I took work home. But for me, it was, he's got one activity. And I say that in social media. When people say, how do I get into social media? I go, pick one. Is it Facebook? Is it Twitter? Is it LinkedIn? Pick one and get good at it. How do I have all these books to read. What am I going to do? How am I going to get these 3 books read before, book club next week? Pick one. Pick one. Pick one show to watch instead of, I have all this TV to watch. There's commercials, like I've got so much TV, pick one. That's a really simple strategy when we start to think about how overwhelmed we are every day. Pick one thing. I remember having a conversation with another supervisor, and she looked at my to-do list. I only had 3 things on it. And she goes, good heavens, you've got to do more than that in a day. Why is it you only have 3 things? And I said, because I have 14 people to support. And by the time I get done supporting all of them, if I get these 3 things done, I'll have a good day. If I put 30 things, which I really have, to get done, I'll be overwhelmed and I won't move a step forward. So that was my version of pick one. Pick the 3 things I'm going to get accomplished that I have to do. And I was there for everybody else to do, because I was managing 14 people. I had to be their coach. I had to be their listener. I had to look at the work that they did. I had a lot of things that weren't my things to do, but that's part of being a manager. So she was like, oh, and I said, try it. Simplify what you're going to do today, and you'll find you'll get more done. So that's why I say pick one. If you want to change your attitude, let's focus on changing your attitude. That means everything you do is going to be focused and you're going to be more aware of it. So when that niggling thought goes, well, no, you say, I hear you. And there's no saber-toothed tigers out there, so I got this one. Let me go. And you can change by how you react to your own inner voice. To me, that's what meditation is. Being aware of those thoughts and picking the ones that you want to change. Because you change one, and that ripple effect takes over.
Right. And we are over our hour. Believe it or not.
Heavens to Murgatroyd.
Yeah, Murgatroyd isn't that close anymore, so you never know. Anyway, because we are over the hour, and I believe Pastor Billy needed to go by the hour, we lost him unexpectedly, but expectedly in a way. We are going to come to an end. There will be a show on Thursday, right, Jeanne?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just making sure. And again, we will be talking about Thanksgiving, because it is Thanksgiving week and a chance to be thankful. So I'm hoping you guys are feeling a little thankful. And if you're not, you're thinking of ways you can become thankful. Remember, we will be on YouTube only probably until next Monday at the latest. And we are going to wave goodbye, and we'll see you on Thursday. Unless you come to speak English on
Wednesday.